Are you carrying a weight of great sorrow? Sorrow that just seems to overwhelm you, kind of like being in the ocean and the waves keep lapping over you and you're just struggling to stay afloat? Well, then this video is for you. I'm going to explain how to overcome sorrow instead of letting it overcome you. I hope you join me on this video, breaking the yoke of great sorrow, and that you stick with me till the end, where I explain how to get free of it from biblical examples and how God taught me and how that's helped me all these years. So please join me. Sorrow, especially great sorrow, especially if it's carried for a long term, can simply overwhelm us, and it depletes us and can end up, if we do not take care of it in a healthy way, in a timely manner, it can just destroy us. Not just us, but our loved ones as our families, if we do not deal with great sorrow. I want to answer a few basic questions about this verse. It's in Isaiah 58, and it's verse 6. It's really the chapter where God is talking about the right type of fasting for Israel. In verses 1 through 5, it talks about the wrong kind of fasting, which is what Israel was doing at the time. And God was telling them basically how they were fasting and why they weren't going to be heard in heaven because of it. But then verses 6 through 14 address the proper way of fasting and the type of fasting God hears. Now, I have been fasting for many, many years. I fast 1 day a week. It's part of my spiritual disciplines in Isaiah 58:6. It specifically says this. This is why fasting is: to loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the bands of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every enslaving yoke. Yes, so that's why I fast, and I have seen the results over these years. Now, I digress because this is not a video on fasting, but it is on the part of breaking every enslaving yoke. And this is how this idea and this video came to be. It wasn't very long ago that I just came before the Lord, and when I fast, I always first ask the Lord about my own condition before I pray for anybody else or anything else. I always say, God, please let me know, are there any areas that I'm not right with you? Please show me. Are there any bonds? Do I have anything where I'm attached to evil, doing evil on a regular? It's not that we're perfect, because we will sin, but I mean purposeful sin, or sin that's a habit or repeat. It's like, I don't want to do that, and God doesn't want us to do that either, because even sin, even if it's pleasure for a season, it brings forth death. But again, I fast, and I was saying, God, do I have any bonds to wickedness? And the Lord was like, no, you don't have any bonds to wickedness, but you are carrying a great yoke. And I was like, a yoke? What is that? What great yoke do I have on me? And he said, you have the yoke of great suffering. And I knew exactly what he meant. I'd been going through pictures the week before, and when I was going through them, they brought up very sad memories for me, and I ended up just crying, and for the rest of the day I was so disappointed, and it actually affected me throughout the week. And I was just like, wow, I don't usually get affected, but it was the combination of what was going on. And so the Lord told me, I don't want you to carry that yoke of great suffering anymore, of great sorrow is what he told me, because it was sorrow over my past, because for 10 years I was physically abused by my father, and he was a social worker. That's a whole nother story. So that set me up for a lot of pain and a lot of sorrow. And then, of course, when you have that, you have PTSD, you develop other things that are sorrowful. And then we've had some things both in my family with my husband and my son and just within our lives that have brought great sorrow. And of course, whenever you have death of loved ones, it brings sorrow. There's many things that can bring sorrow. So the Lord explained it to me, and then he explained what I needed to do to get rid of that great sorrow. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. Now, first, I want to address just some basic questions and answer them as clearly as possible. I do have a tendency to ramble. One of our small group leaders said, I've never seen such a multi-connected brain. And I know everything you say, and when you answer, it has value and it's really good, but people can't always follow you because your brain's like, whoa, bringing in all kinds of verses. So I know you'll probably see that on some of my videos, but I'm like, well, it's valuable. But the Lord has told me, he said, you know what? He said, don't lose the sheep. Keep it simple and keep on the path, dear one, so that the sheep can follow. Okay, so I love to teach and the sheep because I want to bring home as many people as I can to heaven. See, I'm already getting off on a rabbit trail, just telling you that. But let's begin. And I'm going to keep my little notes in front of me just so that I keep on task. So the questions that we want to answer are, first of all, what? What actually is a yoke? Well, for animals, the yoke is that leather or wooden beam that goes, generally it's across two animals, and they pull together, and they're controlled by the driver to do whatever the driver wants them to do, right? They're trained. A yoke in that sense, where it comes from, is something that's placed on the neck of these animals to control them and to do what the driver wants them to do. So you're probably catching my drift. Is that for the purposes of this video and what we're talking about and what God says to break every enslaving yoke off, it's an enslaving yoke. Great sorrow is an enslaving yoke. Because what does it do? It controls your thoughts and emotions. It comes, you behave, you have certain behaviors sometimes when you're driven by it, whether you're thinking about the sorrow intentionally or not. It's because its effect on your body, its effect on your mind, its effect on your choices, and one way or another, it drives you. Now, what about the question, who? Who can develop a yoke? Well, actually, anybody, right? Anybody can. An infant can. It seems impossible, but that is so true. Look at the studies and how they talk about how even little infants and preborn are affected by stress, about great sorrow, and things they can feel. So an infant, a child, a teen, a young adult, an adult into old age, anybody in any culture, if you're human, you can have great sorrow, and it can become a yoke on you. It's not just the who, that anybody at any age can develop a yoke, but it's the when. Suffering, great suffering of any kind at any time in your life can end up placing you under an enslaving yoke of great sorrow. And how does it occur? Well, we just have to think about it. It can be just through your family line. Some families just breed sorrow. They're just like, well, we don't want to be too happy because, there's that other shoe that could fall. And we don't want to get too excited, therefore we're not greatly disappointed. Or, it always comes in threes. Sorrow always comes in three. So it's that type of attitude, the pessimistic attitude, the attitude that you've heard before. You don't want to be, I think, a lot of times unprepared for it, so you overly prepare for it and you just lose the joy of life, period. So that can come from actually family lines, from cultural backgrounds, things like that. It can also come from your environment. If you have to suffer a lot in your environment, just say, even think of, doesn't even have to be third world countries. People suffer in wealthy countries too. There can be many people that are locked in their home, or just be from fear or from their sorrow, right? So it can come from culture. You can have one because of illness, whether it's your illness or somebody else's illness that causes grief, sorrow, suffering, and you, even just to watch them suffer, or people to watch you suffer, or because you can't, maybe you're the ill one and you can't do what you would like to. Perhaps something's happened to you and you've lost the ability to do a gift or a talent or a job that you really, really love to do. That happened to me. And so I understand that there's disappointments, there's betrayals, and there's, of course, spiritual forces that would love to take us down. And there's also the consequences of our own choices and behaviors that have created the great sorrows that have become an enslaving yoke upon us. Why is that? It's actually because we're human. Humans were made in the image of God, and we have deep emotions. We have these senses that God puts within us, that we're to be valued, we're to be allowed to communicate, we're to be loved in spite of choices, we're to be treated appropriately and respectfully. And these are all in us innately, because that's originally God's intent. His intent was not that man would sin and rebel against him and then become under the control of the evil one, because they gave up their right to the relationship with God. And God then had to develop the plan and Jesus to come and save us. That's what he's saving us from, our sin nature, or we would be separated from God for all eternity. So the why is because of these things. We have these emotions. And so when things happen to us, if we're betrayed, we're not like a stick that doesn't feel anything. We're not like, we're humans. We can even think through it. We can reason through it, even if we have the wrong reasonings. There's so much in humans that make us so susceptible to suffering and to having an enslaving yoke of great sorrow. And Jesus even talks about this in John 10:10. When he explains basically the two forces in the world, right? He is good, and then there's evil side. I like the way he says this at first, because he directs it toward the devil and what his purposes are first, but then he says what he came to do, because he overcame the evil. So in John 10:10, it says, "But what did the thief come to do?" And he's referring to the devil, to Lucifer and his evil. "But they can only come to steal and to kill and to destroy." And then Jesus goes on and he says, but I have come to bring you life, and to bring it abundantly. So Jesus said, and in the Amplified it says, to have and enjoy life. Jesus said that. He also said in another verse, he said, in this world you're going to have trouble, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. So the answer, then, where does it lay? The answer lays outside of us, but in who? In Jesus. Now I'm going to explain to you exactly what God told me when I said, how am I to get free of this enslaving yoke of great sorrow. Here's the things he told me. Number one, don't keep going back to the past to review it and to look at it and to think about it. It's over, it's done. Like Paul said, I press on and I go forward. And if you do end up going back or you see pictures, then immediately with the sorrow, say, God, thank you for rescuing me from that life. Not only me, but my father and mother. And think of all the blessings and thank me. And thank me like Joseph. Joseph recognized he had betrayers. He recognized them, but he forgave them. And he knew that the evil that was intended by them, God turned around because God is sovereign and he used it for good. So God said, you need to think about these things. And you need to remember that I formed you, I made you. And he reminded me of Ephesians 2:10, which it says, we are a workmanship. What kind of workmanship? A workmanship created in Christ Jesus, who overcame evil, who overcomes great sorrow, who gives us hope. The enemy loves to use to control us. He not only loves to hurt us initially, he likes to drag it out for as long as he can, to utterly try to destroy us or make us ineffective for God if he can't steal our faith away. He just wants to make us ineffective for God. Whatever your sorrow, great sorrow may be, I'm encouraging you, just as God encouraged me and told me, look to Jesus. Don't look at the past. Look ahead. And you don't have to have a perfect life, a perfect body, anything. Not even a perfect marriage. Okay, I've been married 30 years. We still have issues, right? But you don't have to have perfection in order to have a beautiful and blessed life. A life where you love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and you love others as yourself, just what Jesus did, instead of allowing yourself to be yoked with great sorrow. Next time you feel a wave of sorrow and you feel like it's going to drown you, remind yourself of the things I've said in this video. Watch it again if you need to. And remind yourself of what God did with Joseph, even though he was betrayed, and what Jesus said in the Gospels. And if you can, remember other people's stories who also have had great sorrow, and yet they refused the yoke of great sorrow, and they said no more. The joy of the Lord is our strength. Well, I want to thank you for being with me today. I hope that this video in some way has brought you maybe some insight, understanding, and I really hope it helps to break those yokes of great sorrow, or even medium or little sorrow that you carry off of you, because they are a burden that Jesus does not want us to bear. He bore our burdens on the cross. Just read Isaiah 53. And so I hope that you will come and watch my videos, my shorts on Saturday and Sunday. And I ask that if you've not subscribed to me yet, would you please subscribe, share my videos, comment. Don't be afraid of commenting. Comment. And I like to comment back. And until the next time, bye and be blessed.